I wonder, do you think of yourself as a spiritual person? As we begin reading chapter 12, Swedenborg explores the concept of correspondences. For him, it's a very important one for us to understand. He writes, "Without a perception of what correspondence is, it is impossible for anything to be known clearly about the spiritual world, its influx into the natural world, what the spiritual is in relation to the natural, the spirit of man, which is called the soul, its operation into the body, or the state of man after death." Now, in the notes to the preface, I mentioned how saying "I see" really means "I understand." But there are other sayings in common usage. For example, we say "listen to me" to a child, when really we mean "I want you to do as you are told, I want you to obey me." We might call someone an old fox when they display particular cunning. Or we might describe someone as gentle as a lamb. But correspondences extend beyond mere turns of phrase. Now, whenever Swedenborg begins explaining correspondences, he starts with the face. And a smile is a very good way to begin understanding this concept. We smile when we are happy, but we also know that the smile is not happiness itself. Indeed, it's possible to feign a smile. Now, when the smile is true, that is, when it accurately reflects the happiness within, then it's said to correspond. But when the smile is feigned, that is, it's put on to hide an inner sadness, it still represents happiness, it still communicates happiness to us, but it can only truly be said to correspond when there is that connection with the true inner state. Now, later in this chapter, Swedenborg suggests that every single part of the body is subject to the same principle. And in coming chapters, he expands this idea to take in the whole physical universe. Now, Swedenborg often talks as though a natural man is one type of person, and a spiritual man or a celestial man is another type of person entirely. So, for example, he writes, "He who loves himself and the world above all things regards only worldly pleasures because they are pleasing to the external senses and gratify his inclination. And he does not regard spiritual things because they are pleasing to the internal senses and gratify the mind." But in reality, it's more useful for us to think of them as being states that we have within each one of us. The question is where our focus lies. So why does Swedenborg write in this way? Well, it's easier for us to understand a particular attitude to life when we take those characteristics and we kind of personify them as though they are one person. What does natural behaviour or sensual behaviour look like? But then we must remember that these are all parts of us. So I have a sensual or natural man, I have a spiritual man, and I have a celestial man, all within me, all vying for attention and dominance. So Swedenborg writes, "Since man is both a heaven and a world in least form, there is therefore with him both a spiritual and a natural world." Now, our outer world comes into existence from our inner world. Now, this seems counterintuitive, but there are several ways that we can see this is true. Our perception of our environment and circumstances is determined by our own inner state. So, for example, when you drive a particular type of car, suddenly you see that type of car everywhere. Eleanor Roosevelt said, "No one can make you feel inferior without your consent." and we talk about getting out of the wrong side of bed. We all recognise that a change in attitude can lead to a change in our perception of our circumstances, and it can lead us to make concrete changes to those circumstances. It's a very useful spiritual principle for us to keep in mind. Now, the book I thought I'd introduce you today is Swedenborg's Journal of Dreams. It was never published by Swedenborg himself. As the title suggests, it's a private diary, but it starts out as a travel diary, one of many that he kept in his early years. It begins on the 21st of July 1743 as he leaves Stockholm once more, but within a month he begins recording his dreams rather than his travels. And in April of 1744, just after Easter, Swedenborg recounts his awakening into the spiritual world. It's a fascinating insight into the mind of this brilliant man, and this edition contains commentary by psychologist Wilson van Dusen. So I wonder, can you think of ways in which your attitudes and perceptions have shaped your outer world reality? And are you able to untangle your actions and motivations to see something of your own spiritual mind recreating your natural circumstances and existence? I'd love for you to share your thoughts in the comments below. As always, you're welcome to read along with us or read ahead if you prefer, and you may find there are questions that you'd like for us to answer. I'm very happy for you to add those to the comments. Enjoy the journey.